Please welcome to the stage Qiana Williams and Zoe Allerding.
Hello, everyone. We don't have any flowers or donuts. Just put that right out there. So we're excited to be here today to talk to you about something that's very near and dear to our hearts and something you've been hearing a lot about lately, and that's diversity and inclusion. But before we get started, we want to try something. So we all know that Ohio Health is very data-driven, and we want to collect some data in real time about who is sitting in our audience today. Yep. So some of these questions may be easy to answer, and some are going to be more difficult. If you haven't already, get out your phone, go ahead and text OHOLB to 22333 to get ready for our mobile polling questions. And make sure your autocorrect does not change OHOLB.
Okay, ready? We're going to kick it off with a few easy ones. So question number 1, how did you spend your time on your way to OLB today? A, I got funny looks from neighboring cars because I was jamming to the beat on my way up here. B, news, podcasts, books on tape. I love it all. Shout out to Qiana because I'm sure that's how she spent her time on the way up here. C, I chatted with coworkers on the shuttle. And then D, I prefer to sit in silence and contemplate life. So let us know how you spent your time. What about you?
I was a B.
Definitely a B.
Listen to the news.
I think I'm a mix of like an A, maybe a little chatting with coworkers.
I'm an A on the way home and a B on the way in.
All right, so let's see. So most people chatting with coworkers on the shuttle. A couple people jam into the music, like to see that. Okay, let's try our next question. Which of the following do you identify with? A, I am perfect. Or B, I am imperfect at times. Okay, got a few confident people in the room. Love that, love that. Question number 3. I speak more than one language. A, yes, or for my French-speaking folks, oui. And then B, no. Okay. So not as bilingual as we could be. Might need to add that to our training repertoire, Alice. Okay, so a fun way to kind of kick us off, but as you can see, we're alike in many ways. Now you're probably saying to yourself, okay, Qiana, those questions were pretty surface, and you're right, but they do give us an interesting data point. They show us the ways that we're alike, and they show us how we're different. Now, let's take it a little deeper.
So some of the answers to the questions we're about to ask will probably look familiar. They're pulled from the questions of the Associate Engagement Survey, or the AES, which you're all very familiar with. So this year, we asked some of the questions a little bit differently. And we're excited about that because it's going to allow us to get improved new data where we can see where we are now and where we need to improve. So let's start by seeing who is in the room today. First question, what is your gender identity? Female? Is it male? Non-binary or third gender? Do you prefer not to say? Or maybe you don't see your identity listed up there. All right. So we're seeing a kind of indicative of Ohio Health as a whole system.
Ladies running the world.
We have a lot of women at Ohio Health, so that makes sense. Okay. A little bit on those last 3. All right, let's try another one. What is your race or ethnicity? A, Asian. B, Black or African American. Hispanic or Latino, Native American or Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, white or Caucasian, 2 or more races or ethnicities, or do you not see your race or ethnicity listed? All right, so about 85% white or Caucasian, and that is pretty close to Ohio Health as a whole. All right, let's try another. What is your sexual orientation? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, straight or heterosexual, prefer not to say, or is it something not listed on this slide? Okay, so let's do one more. How did this make you feel? Were you comfortable answering those questions? Were you uncomfortable? Maybe you don't know.
Yeah.
Were you surprised by what you saw on the screen? These questions show our differences, but they also show the many ways that we are alike. And it also shows how differently we feel about this topic and why it can be so difficult to talk about. Because how we identify is so personal. Sometimes who we are is obvious to others, and sometimes it's not. But who we are is defined in so many different ways. And who we are is made up of so many life experiences that we often don't know about one another. And because of those differences, it means that we all experience Ohio Health a little differently. When it comes to experiencing Ohio Health, we're also studying the data as it relates to our community and the populations that we're trying to serve. And when we look at that data, there are a variety of areas that we know that we need to work on, that we know we need to focus. And we're letting the data help figure out where that is. The data around race and ethnicity has surfaced as one of our biggest opportunity areas. And when you take a look at this data here, you can see that overall, as a system, Ohio Health is heavily white or Caucasian. So what do we do with that data? One thing we do is we compare it to the communities that we're serving. So, for example, look at our Black and African American population. In Ohio, it's around 14%. If you focus in on Columbus, you're up to 27%. But when we look at Ohio Health, it's about 10. So there's a 17% difference between Ohio Health and the city of Columbus. And that's a big gap. But we're looking at that gap as an opportunity where we're trying to figure out how do we close it and how can we better serve the people who are counting on us.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. So as a woman of color, I'm thrilled that we're starting with race. But I know this is Ohio Health, and we're going to let the data direct us as to where we should go. Now, when we start with race, it allows us to take in a lot of different groups, right? It's not just African American, it's Asian, it's Hispanic, it's a multitude of entities. Now, let's put one more lens on this data. Let's talk about how our associates are feeling. On this year's AES, you probably noticed some additional questions around diversity. So, diversity is valued at Ohio Health, and I trust the people I work with. Think about it like this. When we interact with individuals who look or feel familiar to us, we're able to build connections. And life is all about connections. But what happens when the people who we interact with don't look or feel familiar to us? It's harder to make connections for some. I know it is for me. But when we have data like this, it allows us to understand what our current state is, it allows us to understand what our opportunities are, and to celebrate our progress when we have it.
Exactly. Data is important. It helps us understand where we should focus. So we are going to share some data with all of you. We were able to pull some preliminary AES data from this past survey that we all took, and we have not had a chance to comb through all the details yet because it's just been a few days. But we're excited to share some things with you, and we've identified some trends. One especially exciting thing for our team was that there was a 10% increase in people who chose to answer those optional demographic questions, from about 70% to about 80% for almost all the questions. So hopefully that indicates that people are feeling more comfortable sharing their true authentic selves and identifying here at Ohio Health. So let's look at some data together, and we're going to start with gender. All right, so my team has a culture in which diverse perspectives are valued. When you look at this question, for those who identify as male or female, it's around 81%, pretty favorable. However, when you look at people who identify as something outside of that binary, so non-binary, third gender, something not listed, that drops to below 50%. Another slide. Our associates practice open and honest communication. Again, those associates who identify as male and female are leading the way with 73 and 75% favorable. But the non-binary, third gender, or anything not listed is between 44 and 54% favorable. So that N number of people who make up non-binary, third gender, or something not listed is small. But it's important to look at how these questions are answered by everyone, because there's a significant gap there in how people feel about these questions based on their gender identity. For example, the question about diverse perspectives being valued. If I identify as male or female at Ohio Health, my score is over 80% favorable. But if I identify differently than that, I'm less likely to think favorably. And I'm probably less comfortable feeling like my perspectives are valued here. We have to create opportunities for everyone in a space where everyone is included. So let's look at race and ethnicity. And this one is actually very interesting. So when we look at this question, I trust the people with whom I work. We've had a pretty steady trend from 2014 to 2018 on this, where we see white and Asian associates scoring pretty high in the low to mid 80s. This year, our Black and Hispanic associates are actually around 72%, which is higher than they've been the last 3 years. However, all of other people of color are in the 60s. This is a trend we need to break. We need to have everyone feel a high level of trust with their colleagues in order to bring their true selves to work and do the best job. Here's another one. When we look at I'm willing to put an effort beyond what is expected to help Ohio Health be successful, every single group is in the 90s. And that really says something. Even if you're not experiencing Ohio Health the same, we're all showing up. Everybody is in. We all want to be here. If we can close that trust gap, think about the level of productivity, think about the associate engagement on your teams.
Yeah, so let's look at one more. Physicians I work with treat me with dignity and respect. So if we look at the favorability for our associates who identify as straight or heterosexual and compare that to how our associates who identify as gay responded, we see an 8-point gap. So it's data like this, the one that I just showed, as well as the one that Zoe showed, that show us that depending on who you are and what your life experiences are, you may experience Ohio Health very differently from other associates. And without data like this, we don't know where to start. We don't know where to lean in. And as we see today, there are plenty of opportunities for us to lean in.
Exactly. So we know from experience that it's important to start with data, but it's important that we don't get lost in data. We're not just here to talk about numbers and metrics and graphs. We want to talk about people. We all need to see each other with open eyes, and we need to understand the feelings associated with those open eyes, our feelings and the feelings of others. It's about starting the conversation even when it's difficult and uncomfortable. So to help us continue to that conversation, please join us in welcoming to the stage Todd Corley, Ohio Health's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And he's going to define for us what diversity and inclusion means at Ohio Health and why that is so important. Thank you.